Hello there.
You know what I've come for. This is the way.
I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
Hello there, and welcome back to The Pod Awakens. We are recapping Chapter 9 of The Mandalorian called The Marshal, which is Season 2, Episode 1, directed by Jon Favreau, written by Jon Favreau, produced by Jon Favreau, pretty much everything done by Jon Favreau in this episode, and Ludwig von Göransson. Ludwig Göransson doing the music, as always. So let's get into it. Let me give a little bit of a synopsis here. Seeking other Mandalorians to help him reunite the child with its kind, the Mandalorian approaches criminal Korish, who supposedly knows their whereabouts. And then who tells him that there's rumors of another Mandalorian operating on Tatooine. Returning to Tatooine, the Mandalorian and child are reunited with mechanic Peli Motto, and she reveals the location of Mos Pelgo, a town thought destroyed and not shown on most maps. So we'll just leave the synopsis there because we're going to be getting into some of that here. But just, I guess, overall thoughts on the episode, Logan, when you sat down and watched this before the rest of us.
Yeah, so I was able to watch it. I won't tell you when because people might be listening. But I watched the episode, and you know how hard it is to watch a new episode of The Mandalorian and not text you guys and not spoil anything. I know, Jordan, I texted you separately because I was talking about how bad Liverpool are at football and how small of a club they are, but
people don't really know what this is, Logan.
Yeah, but that's fine. Yeah, they're fans. But no, I was texting Jordan, and then I said because I knew that he couldn't watch it, and he was like, "I want to make a prediction," and I said, "Okay," and he predicted the outcomes, and I promise you not, if we can like show this on like some kind of show notes or something, he literally predicted the exact thing that happened. It was nuts. But my thoughts, as soon as it opens, like I got those like goosebumps. Like it was a fantastic start. It was exactly what I wanted in season 2. It got me excited, and then it didn't let me down for the last 55 minutes of the episode.
Yeah, I guess I'll go next. This was a great episode for me. I mean, not my favorite of the show yet, but maybe that's because I wasn't surprised. As Logan mentioned, I pretty much nailed exactly what was going to happen. And I'll tell you how. One, the Disney Plus Twitter showed the title of the episode, The Marshal, and it showed that he was on Tatooine, and I was able to put 2 and 2 together from my knowledge from the books. So that's something that helped me kind of deduce that, and we'll get into that later. So I wasn't as completely shocked as some people may have been. So, but overall, it felt like a strong premiere. I like that it was 50-some minutes, which we were kind of lacking last season. Like long episodes where, sometimes it just seems like it'd be like, oh, we're just getting into it and then it's over. I was surprised, I guess, that this was still kind of a pretty decently standalone episode. There was, the very beginning where he goes to see Gore, that he's kind of saying, hey, I got to return this child and I need to find other Mandalorians to do so. And that's kind of set up. But the actual plot on Tatooine was kind of a pretty standalone story, I guess, though it will probably tie in to the greater story as we go. Matt, your overall thoughts on the show?
As somebody who just became a big Star Wars fan, I had no idea what to expect. But the episode was great. I thought, in terms of my favorite part, was the minimal role that Baby Yoda played. I like where they are going at the start of season 2 because you can see how they're progressing the story with how they're now it's the next stage into what Mando is trying to figure out with Baby Yoda, where to take him. And I think in terms of it, I honestly, Cobb Vanth, I know we'll talk about him, but I would be very okay if he was on the show a lot more than just that one episode.
And I'm sure he will, with that, with what they say at the end there. But yeah, let's get into it, I guess. So the main plot, as we said, was we start out kind of with the Mandalorian Din Djarin walking through this kind of graffiti town as he comes across a ring fight with two Gamorreans in there fighting with some vibro blades, it looked like, and he gets criminal Gorish. He's got like one eye, green, and Baby Yoda and the Mandalorian are telling him, just like I said before, that he's trying to find other Mandalorians, and Gore tries to get him to make a bet off of the Mando says no, like I don't leave things up to chance. Gore says neither does he, and all of his guards pull out the guns and point them at Mando. And I guess here, for whatever reason, is that it is he wants the armor, right? Isn't that what it was, Logan? He wants the armor from Mando. He collects all the Beskar steel, and it's implied that if there were any other Mandalorians, that Gore is kind of taken care of them. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's kind of got that idea of like he's more interested in the suit and rather not interested in what Mando's interested in. But like that whole scene to open that up, like underneath and I think I heard somebody compare it to kind of like it's the dark world. It's almost like hell for Star Wars, where it's where the dark things go to take place and things that you were normally wouldn't want to be a part of. And so the fact that it starts out there with that boss, the crime boss, it's just like fascinating because it is like Matt's saying, it's progressing, and really that's really the only time you get much of like Baby Yoda's interactions with Mando is when they're doing that. So starting out with that, and then they're after again his armor, and then you feel like, okay, so they're getting into his armor and they're making a big deal out of this Mandalorian because he feels like he knows where this other Mandalorian is, and then he says he knows that there's a Mandalorian, or he knows of a Mandalorian, and Mando's like, what are you talking about? Another Mandalorian? Where? And then that's when we get into the coolest part of the episode, in my opinion.
Yeah, I do love though when he he kind of says to Gore, like, hey, I'm going to kill you if you don't tell me, right? Or like he's going to get out of this with all the guns around him, and Gore's just kind of like, yep, whatever. And we get the whistling birds right back again with the wrist rockets. And Baby Yoda has seen it before. He knows what's going on. He closes his little pod, ducks away in there. Is a great moment. And Mando just has this really great fight, taking down everybody. It was wonderful. And then really one of my favorite parts with Mando reminds me so much of Batman, okay, with all his gadgets. But when he puts Gore upside down on the street lamp, and then he shoots the street lamp saying he won't be the one that kills him. And then you just see all these animals start trying to creep in to eat Gore, and you just see Mando turn his back and walk away, and it was just so Batman, so great. Matt, any last thoughts on this part before we get into Tatooine stuff?
No, nothing that you guys didn't already cover, because it definitely was it was really cool to see I just love watching him in action whenever he has to do any type of fighting, because no matter how many people, he's still gonna win. And he's so calm with it. Pedro Pascal is such a good person to have as Mando, because it just feels like that's like him in real life.
Right. So he goes to Tatooine, and we get Peli Motto again, Motto or whatever, played by Amy Sedaris. She remembers he doesn't like droids, but after his experience with IG-11, he's like, let them do their work. And it shows kind of the character growth from Mando. She pulls up a map of Tatooine before the destruction of the second Death Star or whatever. It was an old map that shows Mos Pelgo on there, which typically was thought to have been destroyed, I guess. And he decides he's going to go over there. He takes Baby Yoda with him. He's not leaving Baby Yoda with what's her name, Peli again. But cool little fact here, R5 unit, when she pulls R5 over, this is the same R5 unit from A New Hope that when Uncle Owen is buying the droids, he picks the R5 unit in C-3PO. R5 has a bad motivator. It kind of combusts and pops out of the back of his droid head. And Luke is like, hey, this one's got a busted motivator. And, Uncle Owen's like, hey, you sold us a bad droid. We want the blue one, when 3PO recommends R2. And that's how R2 joins Luke Skywalker. But here he is, and the way you can tell it's the same one is just he's got that scarring still on the back of his droid head from where that motivator busted. Plus, he was on Tatooine, just like R5 was, and I thought it was a little cool nod here. Just something little, like not something that everybody has to notice or has to flip their mind over. But for me, I was like, oh, look, that's R5. It was really kind of a nice, sweet moment. To know that he's okay. He had his blown motivator, but he's fine. He's doing well. He's better off, probably. So we get Mando going over to Mos Pelgo, and one thing I noticed right away here, and that Mos Pelgo looked a little off when it comes to Tatooine, and it's because everything is raised on the wood, which actually ends up having a story reason, right? But at first, I'm like, that's kind of weird. I didn't really think much of it. But this is where the preview on Disney Plus's Twitter shows. It shows Mando riding into Mos Pelgo. It says the Marshal. And we're introduced to this character in a few minutes, Cobb Vanth of Vanth Disintegrations. And he, I saw somebody post that on Reddit, which I thought was funny. But we see him ride in there. And that's when I knew, okay, Cobb Vanth in the Aftermath books, for somebody that doesn't know, these were books released in 2015, 2016, and 2017, written by Chuck Wendig. And Cobb Vanth is introduced in this little interlude thing. He's not a main character, but they kind of show him getting the Boba Fett armor. And he was known as the Marshal of Mos Pelgo, or as they called it, Freetown, I think is what they called it is what they kind of renamed it. And it was really cool that I was like, okay, I know Timothy Oliphant is in this. He was said to be Cobb Vanth, but I didn't know if that was actually going to happen, because I'm like, how many people know who Cobb Vanth is? And I'm like, they'll never pull in this book character into The Mandalorian. And then they actually did it. And I'm very amazed. And since Solo, I guess, with Darth Maul, we've started to see an increase of references from the animated series, from the comics, from the books, into some of these other movies and stories. And Cobb Vanth, played by Timothy Oliphant, was really great. And he walks in with the Boba Fett armor. What was your thought, Logan, as somebody that had no idea about Cobb Vanth and Boba Fett after the Sarlacc pit? What was your first initial reaction?
So I noticed like I was reading through some of the other people and watching some of the videos as I was like trying to see if there was any Easter eggs that I was missing. And the one thing I actually did notice when he first walks in is the fact that looked he looked a lot taller than I remember Boba being, and I was like, okay, so that's
Yeah, the
not
armor
him.
didn't fit.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and then like he had this like almost like a sweatshirt looking thing underneath it. He almost looked like the guy like that was like trying to pull off that he was Boba Fett, and you're like, dude, no, you're not. And then I love again the visual storytelling that happens in Mandalorian. It starts there, and that whole scene is just so cool, and because of the dynamic that like the Wild West of Star Wars, like this takes it up 10 notches to ultimate Wild West of the Star Wars universe, and it was just so cool. And I love Mandalorian, like the Mando's um, facial expressions. Again, that sounds weird, but you know what I mean if you watch it. That he gives you that kind of like blank stare, like what the hell are you wearing? So that was a great part. And again, I don't know who Cobb Vanth is. Jordan had to enlighten me on that one. But again, I don't know. I don't know what to expect from him. I hope, like Matt said, that he gets more parts because that guy, Timothy Oliphant or whatever his name is like fantastic. Just the kind of cool and calm that he is. And even when Mando approaches him about the armor, he gives a very cool and calm and collected answer to like why he has it. So I hope he's in it more because I love this scene when he first walks into that old tavern kind of thing, like in the Wild West.
Right. And if anybody that knows Timothy Oliphant or Elephant, however you say it, he was in Justified, which he played a like sheriff type guy, and he was in Deadwood, which was a show about the Wild West. So this is really up his alley. He also made an appearance in The Office as a traveling salesman, though. No, not a Wild West reference or anything there. Matt, your reaction here when you see somebody in Boba Fett's armor and it's not Boba Fett. What was your initial reactions as a new Star Wars fan in this type of moment here?
I think I was just more impressed with the fact that I had a thought that it might be Boba Fett's armor. Just because it's all still pretty fresh into my mind,
right?
With the series itself or Star Wars itself, I saw it and I was like, okay, that's clearly not a legitimate Mandalorian. Like that's not a Mandalorian. Like there's no way. I think it was more so that red sweatshirt thing, like Logan said, that was under the armor. I was like, that just doesn't look right. And so as he kind of told the story, I was like, okay, so they actually might be tying this into Boba Fett and him, what happened to him after he fell into the Sarlacc pit, which I'm happy they kind of continued on with that and you learned a little bit more with kind of what happened afterwards. But I think he definitely came in and I enjoyed his conversation with Mando in terms of how he got the armor and why he basically wore it, more so because it gave him protection, but also it gave him like a purpose in the city. He was kind of the one that protects them at that point. But the character itself is just really good, and there really isn't too much more, I guess, in my opinion of it. It's just I just like that they're tying it around everything that happened with the movies and bringing it into the show and kind of giving characters who, technically, I guess, in a way, like almost 40 years ago, you saw Boba Fett for, I guess, really like the last time in the movie. And now you're kind of seeing that you might be bringing him back on a TV show at this point. It's really cool to see it kind of come for full circle.
Yeah, and I think one thing that I really like about this is just using what you have, right? Like somebody already wrote a story where Boba Fett's armor is in Tottenham, in Tatooine, and Cobb Vanth has it, right? And instead of them just they're like, well, how can we use this, right? And they just made it work. Jon Favreau does not read all the books. I can tell you that much, right? So what? He goes to Lucasfilm where he talks with Dave Filoni and says, how do we get Boba Fett into this show? And they're like, well, actually, right now his armor is with Cobb Vanth on Tatooine. And it's like, well, if we already know Boba Fett was on Tatooine, somebody's going to lead him to Boba Fett on there. But first, we'll get Cobb Vanth, and we'll have this cool Wild West type episode where we take down, like almost like a big bear, like a big dragon, type thing. But it was almost like a, Wild West story with like a wild creature. And they just made it work. And I think that is great, because back in the day, they probably would have just said, well, we'll disregard that. We'll just do something else. But making it work with the books, making it work with the movies is just making it feel that much more real. And if you read the books, great. You're like, oh, Cobb Vanth, awesome. If you don't read the books, they tell you exactly what happened. Pretty much his flashbacks was like the chapter from the book. They changed some things, but him getting picked up by the Jawas, him making a deal for the armor, the fight in the bar, all of that stuff was stuff from the books, and they just made it work with how they wanted to tell their story here. And if you read the books, like I said, great. You're feeling a little bit more immersive. If you're not reading the books, they tell you what you need to know, and he's just a cool character now. Like it doesn't lose anything, but it gains so much. It gains so much where people are like, you know what? Maybe I should read the books. They actually matter. You're not feeling like, oh, I read this book and then they'd immediately disregarded it and said, never mind. Like, now I wasted my time, And I think that's really awesome. It reminds me of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, while they do deal with just movies, but just the tie-ins you always get with that movie universe, right? With, the bad guy in Spider-Man was pissed off at Tony, or, and like Far From Home, when Mysterio worked on the tech we saw in Civil War, and it like ties that stuff into it. And now we are seeing more of that with Star Wars since the Disney merger. And that's one thing I think Disney and Lucasfilm has gotten absolutely right with a lot of this stuff. So they make a deal, right? Because the Krayt Dragon, which are known to be on Tatooine, has been terrorizing Mos Pelgo, and it comes and interrupts, eats a bantha, and Cobb Vanth says, that's why I need the armor, but if you help me defeat this, I'll give you your armor, you can take it back to the Mandalorians, and because at that point, everything would be handled, which shows some reasoning there, right? They were both very reasonable. I'm not sure if Mando would have been this reasonable if it was early season 1, but I feel like we've seen some growth where he is more willing to make these deals with what he might consider an imposter. What do you think, Logan?
Yeah, I like that they make the deal. I like that again, it's like, it speaks to that Wild West of making a deal. And like, I don't know, like, this is a weird way to throw in the quote, but I don't know if we were doing quotes, but like, one of my favorite quotes was when they were having that standoff and coming to agreement of like what they were going to do. They both pull their guns, and Vanth goes, we going to do this in front of the kid? And Mando goes, he's seen worse. Kind of like, this. And so with this monster coming in and everything else, like, Baby Yoda still is just hanging around like a small child, and all these people keep asking, like, are you okay with the kid being here? And they're like, yeah, because he's seen worse. But again,
he's 50 years old.
Yeah, exactly. So you've seen a lot at 50, but I like the way that they play into these deals. I like the way that then I think that this Krayt Dragon is probably the best CGI that I think Star Wars have done. Just because it looks so cool and terrifying all the same time. But again, like you said,
really good for a TV show.
Yes. And I told you guys this. I remember texting you guys, what the heck is their budget? I would love to know per episode how much money they spend. But again, the wheeling and dealing, the Wild West, I'm all for it. Sign me up for whatever. If this is going to be, a couple episodes like this here and there with Cobb Vanth, I would love that.
One thing I like too is that in the route to the Dragon's Cave, they encounter Tusken Raiders, and we know from season 1, episode 5, which we didn't recap yet. We'll have to get back to those. But we know that the Mandalorian knows how to communicate with these people, and he does so effectively, while Cobb just wants to, like, you know, blow them all up, right? He just wants to fight them. But we find out they have a mutual enemy, and that's the Great Dragon, and that they want it killed as well. It terrorizes them too, but they also they want the food. They want the pearl that's inside of it. They want, you know, all of that type of stuff. I guess it shows, Matt, that Tusken Raiders can be reasonable and they're not animals if you don't just rush at them with a lightsaber, slaughtering all of them like Anakin Skywalker did.
Yeah, I was reading a little on Reddit about that, and a lot of people praised the fact that Mandalorian has done things such as make the Tusken Raiders and make the Jawas not seem as just these monstrous side characters that just want to, you know, either steal from you, kill you. They actually can be bargained with, and you can actually speak with them, and they've given them that character a little bit more background, which has been nice, especially for people who have definitely been watching Star Wars a lot longer than I have. I can see where that can be a really beneficial and positive, a very positive
and refreshing
progression. Yeah, it's like it kind of progresses the characters, which in a show, sometimes people might go like, what can you really do with a Star Wars show? Like, what else can you really add in? And the fact that you can take these characters from movies and actually give them even more to the storyline and put them in there is definitely which it was nice to see it, because my only knowledge of the Tusken Raiders really is Anakin basically deciding to, you know, make them extinct. It seems like
they're animals. And I slaughtered them like animals.
But I think that was another part of the show of the episode that I really liked, was the ability to negotiate instead of it being just, you know, Mando against Cobb Vanth. You know, they actually could talk to each other and come to an agreement that was good for both parties. And, you know, he was also able to play mediator between the Tusken Raiders and the, you know, Cobb Vanth and his, you know, the villagers, because they clearly don't get along. They fight each other, but he was able to be like, hey, like, you guys need each other. And I think that also just kind of shows a nice character trait in Mando, is that he's not really just a hitman, you know. There's clearly more to him, and that's why he's probably the best at his job, is that he can do more than just attack. You know, he's a smart character who brought people who hate each other together to destroy this gigantic beast.
Just wait till Friday when the Ewoks eat Mando's face off. Talk about character development.
They went crazy after they defeated the Empire.
Rabies.
Is there any like preview? Do they do any like?
No.
I completely forget, but they don't do like a preview of the next episode, do they? Anywhere?
No, I don't even think we know the name of it yet. So
no, it's always a shock with them.
Yeah.
Jeez.
So with that though, with what Matt was talking about, when we get back to, you know, they make the deal, right? And what I like when we kind of get into quotes like Logan just said there, one quote that really stuck out to me when we're talking about Mando making that deal and that pitch to the townspeople is he says they'll leave you alone, you know, like they'll never bother you again. And some person like asked a question about that, and he says, until your people break the truce. And what I think that shows is that the Sand People, the Tusken Raiders, don't do this stuff unless if they're provoked, typically. Is how it kind of came across, right? And that the way Mando says it is that not until somebody breaks the truce, but until your people break the truce, which means I think Mando knows as well that people might be the real animals there. That's how I took it. What do you think, Logan? You think that's what he's kind of referring to here? That, of course, it's going to be humans that break that truce, not the Raiders.
Yeah, and I love they play to it. Like, there's a part where they're loading up for like the war or something, or no,
they
it is-
drop a
yeah,
bomb.
and they
Yeah,
drop the
drop one
bomb,
of the bombs.
and he goes, whoa, 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 and he goes, I think Vance was like, it was an accident, and again, like you said, like, and I think Mando is that way too. I think Mando's a great character because he's not like most Mandalorians, like Matt said, that he's not like this outlaw that is out there just doing his own thing, and whatever happens. He knows that there's consequences because of all the bad things that have happened in his history, which we don't know much of yet. Like, we know kind of what happened where his parents were killed, but we don't really know like more of that backstory that we really need to get to understand even more of like his depth. But I really do like the way that shows that. I mean, there is deeper, like, the humans are the monsters, not the monsters themselves. Like, we create these monsters in our mind, and we're the monsters ourselves. It's just kind of this symbolic meaning of like these monsters are out there and existing, but we're the ones that create them and fathom them.
So we get to the Sarlacc pit that the crate dragon actually ate the Sarlacc, so it's an empty Sarlacc pit. That was a nice little nugget of information there.
I think that was my favorite quote, was when I can't remember who said at this point, but when he was like, "There's no such thing as like an empty Sarlacc pit," and then he's like, "There is if something ate the Sarlacc."
Right, that was such a great. I think it was Cobb that said, "There's no such thing as an empty Sarlacc pit,"
Yeah.
and Mando said, "There is if something has eaten the Sarlacc." And I thought that was just some really cool world building, and being able to have the crate dragon kind of out of screen for a bit. You know, they didn't want to blow the whole CGI budget, so of course you see only some of it when it comes out. You know, like you don't have it like out in the open waiting for an attack, and they had to lure it out. I feel so sorry for these poor banthas that were always used as bait. I really did. I'm like, you poor bantha. Yep. That I actually liked it when the crate dragon went for the person instead of the bantha. I was like, oh, it got the Tusken Raider instead. Awesome. Because I felt so sorry that, you know, these banthas are like horses, right? So that's like, you ride your horse all the time, you take care of it all the time, and you're like, you know what? Just feed it to the dragon. Like, poor horse. He's like, I've been loyal to you, sir. What are you doing? And then they get the bright idea the second time to strap the banthas with thermal detonators. And when the dragon comes out and gets high enough, because its only weak spot is the belly, that they have to blow this. And it did not really work at all the first time. They dug in all of these detonators underneath the sand. It doesn't work. Then they throw these like harpoons at it to try to slow it down or pull it out, I guess. And that doesn't really work. And all these Tusken Raiders holding on to the rope. I'm like, just let go. You're going to get pulled into the dragon's mouth. Just let go. You're not going to be able to stop the dragon from pulling you. That dragon's like, 2,000 pounds. So we get Mando doing his heroic, well, not yet. The actual dragon goes all the way up to the top of the mountain, and we get to see Cobb and Mando use their jetpacks and get up at the top, and they're still shooting it. And then we get Mando pulling his sacrifice play where he tells Cobb to take care of the child, and he goes, well, he kind of gets the dragon to swallow the bantha that's strapped and himself, and he uses his little electric gun to kind of shock him enough so he can fly out of there, and then he turns on the detonator, and the crate dragon is dead. What was your thought on this action sequence, Matt? Was it pretty satisfying?
Yeah, I thought it was a really well done action sequence. I also really like the little Easter egg of Cobb Vanth using Boba Fett's armor and the jetpack when he hits the jetpack and it goes flying again to get him out of the way. It was really well done, and it was actually really exciting because you didn't really know after their initial plan didn't work. You kind of figured they were going to win, but I also was watching it going, I don't really know how they're going to do it. Like, what's going to be the plan? I kind of figured at the end when he saw when he was like, okay, I'm going to get him to eat I forget what's the name of the horse thing again?
A bantha, yeah.
Yeah, the bantha. When he saw it with all the explosives, and he was like, I'm going to get it to eat it. I kind of figured in a way he was going to be inside the crate dragon, and then somehow get out to explode him, which seems to be what happened. But for a TV show and in general with how they've handled Star Wars action sequences, it kind of felt like a mix between modern day action sequence with a little bit of the late 70s, early 80s of the original trilogy. It felt like.
Yeah, I can see that too, where it is. I don't know. Mando just really nails the feel of the original trilogy. Like, it really does. Like, I feel like everything I watch of this could have been made back then, just a little bit better graphics.
Yeah, if you go in, that's what it's like. Looking at it, you're like, okay, it seems like something that you would see in the original trilogy, but obviously how it's detailed and basically like how it's done just looks like it is more modern. Kind of similar. I know this isn't sports, but this is a sports podcast, but similar to like retro logos in sports these days. I feel like looks so much better because it's the retro logo with more modern day tech that can design it, and I think that's what makes it look so much better.
Yeah, if you go back and look at, I didn't realize this, and I want to go back and watch it again because they said this. I was watching a YouTube channel, and they said that the filters and the cutaways that are used, like in between scenes, are the exact same feel as like A New Hope. If you go back and look at the way they cut to a new scene, they're using the same elements to cut the scenes, so
they do that in the whole saga 1 through 9. They have the wipes and the way that the screen will like wipe sometimes and stuff like that. Yeah, very, very nice. Because those were very kind of like, I don't know how advanced they were back then, but nowadays those are sometimes seen as corny. But it's Star Wars. That's the style of how you wipe from a scene, or the way you cut to the next scene. It just feels like Star Wars when you're watching it. So they defeat it. They get back to the village, Mos Pelgo, and Cobb says, "Here's the armor. Good job. You're awesome, right?" And Mando's like, "Thanks, see you later." And they pretty much say, "I hope to see you again," which makes me think that maybe this season's going to go like season 1. Season 1, Mando met a few people that he kept saying, "Hope to see you again," and then they all kind of came back at the last, last few episodes to help with, the season finale. That maybe we'll kind of get the same thing where Cobb comes back, or maybe even next episode, because it doesn't seem like he's left Tatooine yet. And we get that ending where a heavily scarred stranger watches from afar, as Wikipedia puts it. But he is Tamora Morrison, who played Jango Fett, and it's implied that it is Boba Fett out of the Sarlacc pit, overlooking it. Probably, I don't know if you can see his armor there, but I'm sure that will come up where he's going to ask for that back. Now, that makes me ask you, Logan, is that what episode 2 is about, or do we get a little bit longer of a time frame before we see that?
No, we go to some kind of like swamp village next where it doesn't have any kind of indication on the plot, but no, I think that you don't get anything at all. I think actually you see more Baby Yoda. Sorry, Matt. I think you see more Baby Yoda in the next. I think that you get more onto his storyline now.
We don't need that.
Well, I know you don't like him, but I love him to death. But I think that Ashley's in the room currently, and she just gasped at your disdain for Baby Yoda, which I think we all agree with, right, Jordan? But
It's
yeah.
called The Mandalorian, not the Baby Yoda show.
Well, if we had a Baby Yoda show, would you watch it?
Probably not.
Probably not. Okay. What if you wore a Dolphins jersey? Sorry, this isn't
Then
a sports.
I would
Yeah.
I would reconsider.
But no, but like you said, Jordan, I think that we break away. Mando has a tendency to do this, where it breaks away to some other storyline, and then we don't get any mention of what just happened. But then you do pick it up somewhere else. I do think that we do get more of him trying to find out where Baby Yoda's species is. I think we get closer to like more of that storyline, and also the storyline of like more of Mando's life and his past experiences.
I don't think we're going to get more of the Baby Yoda storyline. We'll get more Baby Yoda, but I think that right now the route they're going is that he has to find more Mandalorians, which will then lead him to the Jedi, which will lead him to Yoda's family. Or the way that the armorer put it last season is that his people are the Jedi, not necessarily the species. So I think he might be looking for Jedi. And if the rumors are correct that that Sabine is going to be in here. She's from Rebels. She has a tie to the Jedi, and she's a Mandalorian. So maybe that is how we're going to kind of get... and Bo-Katan is supposed to be in this as well, and she's from the Clone Wars and just Clone Wars. And she's another Mandalorian. So I think that's why we're getting all these Mandalorians. And I think maybe next season might be the one where we kind of get more of the... Okay, now I've found my people. They've all told me this stuff. Now I have to go find, the Jedi. Because Ahsoka is a Jedi. She's rumored to be in this, but I don't think she's going to be like, oh, let me take that baby off your hands right now. She's kind of got her other thing going on right now. But I think maybe, like, Mandalorians and Jedi never usually like each other, but Sabine and Bo-Katan have had really good relationships with Jedi to the point where I think that might be able to change Mando's position on the Jedi. He was kind of like told by the armor that this is, an enemy. But that's not the case. And they're going to be able to say, no, look, we worked with the Jedi during the Empire, and there's ones we can trust. So you should go find Luke Skywalker or something.
Do you think maybe we get like more of Cara Dune coming back? Or do you think like she
does come back. Yeah, I mean, from the not set photos, but the promotional photos, it looks like, and the trailers, that he does go back to meet Greef and Cara Dune again. So, I'm not sure how many episodes they'll be in, but I think that they'll be back for probably a good half of the season, actually. I think he'll start off alone. He's probably going to come across something where he needs to get their help again. We still have the whole Moff Gideon storyline with the Darksaber kind of still up in the air. That's going to tie in the Mandalorians as well, because that's one of their most famous weapons. So it seems like this season might be Mandalorian heavy, not like Din Djarin, but like the culture of Mandalore heavy, I think, is what we're going to get this season. And maybe next season we get more of that. Well, now I have to deliver Baby Yoda or something. Matt, your thoughts on, do we get Boba Fett next week, or do we have to wait a little longer, you think?
No, I would think you were going to have to wait a little longer. It's a great cliffhanger at the end of the episode, but I think they're going to make us wait a few. You might get maybe like another end of the episode clip of like a Boba, like maybe something else kind of showing that he's following them. Like I could see that, but I would have to assume it's going to be a little bit of time before you get like the Boba episode where you're like, he plays a bigger role. I think this next episode, I would like to see this next episode, the characters from season 1 kind of play a little bit of a role to see how they're going. Bring in Cara Dune or I always forget the
Greef.
Yeah, I was thinking in my head, I was like, I want to say Creef, but I know that's not right.
Just think sadness all the time. Greef. He's always in that stage of denial.
I love the character. Like, he's got great facial hair in this season from the preview.
Yeah,
but,
he does.
I would like to see them kind of play a role in the next episode, and you kind of get an episode a little bit more setting those characters back up and what they're up to or what they're doing, and then maybe episodes down the line you get Boba Fett actually in there.
I'm gonna say out of the three of us, I think most likely I will be the one that say most likely I think we're getting part of Boba next week. I think that with him chasing him, we do see in the trailer that somebody does shoot down Mando's ship on an icy planet. Maybe Boba's following him and decides to kind of shoot him down. I don't know. Or he hasn't actually left Tatooine yet, so maybe when he goes back to Peli to get on his ship and she sees the armor, maybe she recognizes it's Boba Fett's armor. He's one of the most notorious bounty hunters in the galaxy. Maybe we get some sort of confirmation. I would say I would feel less likely of it if we saw him leave Tatooine already, but with both of them still on there right now, I think maybe the chance is pretty good that we might get that this week, and I hope so. I don't want it to stretch out too much, because we also have, like I said, rumors of Bo-Katan, Ahsoka, and Sabine. We got to start getting some of this storyline going. We only got 8 episodes this season.
This is kind of cool. Rachel just showed me a tweet that says they hired an actual deaf actor to play one of the Tusken Raiders to help create Tusken sign language. That's really cool.
Yeah, it makes it feel authentic too. Like, you're not just watching somebody moving their hands about. They have like a purpose on how they're doing it.
Yeah,
because Mando's like his reactions to the Tusken Raiders when he's approaching them real slow, you can tell he's like very easy and like, he's trying to communicate with them like, I'm calm. It's just all calm down. So that is cool.
All right. Any other last thoughts before we get out of here? This was a really fun episode, I think, of The Mandalorian. And if this is what we're in on for season 2, I am all for it. I'm getting really excited to have something to look forward to every single Friday until the week before Christmas, I think it is. December 18th, I think, is the last episode. So this will run us up right to Christmas. I know. I'm going to be so excited. So if you want to reach out to us, you can reach us on Twitter at PodAwakens, Facebook.com/PodAwakens, Instagram @PodAwakens. I never post on Instagram. Don't even bother trying to contact me there. I don't think. PodAwakens@gmail.com for the email. Let us know your thoughts and feelings on Chapter 9, The Marshal. I do like that they're continuing the chapter number from season 1, because it does make it feel like, hey, this is still one story. We're on chapter 9. This is not chapter 1 again. This is still chapter 9. I like that. All right. Well, I guess that about does it here. So thanks everybody for listening, and we'll catch you next week when we recap chapter 10, whatever that may be called. See you next time.
I have spoken.
It's over, Anakin!